because like we just did, I love a good chat.
It's always fun to have a good chat. It's like when you call up somebody and you're like, hey, what are you doing? And, they're like, oh, I've just got the cat in my lap, which is code for something lesbian, I'm sure. But then you're like, can you come over and make a picture of me? Because I'm about to have sex with a lot of people I haven't met yet. And that's like, it's a good conversation to have, not with them particularly, but with the people you're having sex with. Because then you got to be like, hey, hold on to the headboard or, whatever, because then they'll lose their grip. And there's nothing worse than like being in the middle of something and somebody falls away. And you're like, oh, it's just getting fun. But I mean, you know what that's like. Come on, don't have to tell you.
Exactly.
We all know. We all know. So,
all right. All right. Talking about the headboard.
It's a great way to start any conversation, really.
It is.
Isn't it? Yeah.
All right. So, my questions, Dixie, also go into Chris's background. Are you happy to switch?
He is an angel sent straight from baby Jesus. Yes, I will talk about him. Can I talk about him in the third person?
Of course you can.
I mean, he's so handsome, but yeah, I mean, he's not here. He's out getting like eggs and butter and stuff.
Yeah.
Not like buying it, but like churning it himself. He's very handy.
Good. All right. So, I'll just cut off the intro because it's easier to do later. Right. So I'll just get myself settled. I'm getting hot in here. Oh my God.
That's the beginning of a song. And you know what happens after they say that? They say, take off all your clothes. I am getting so hot. I'm going to take my clothes off. Do you have that song down there? It's an old song. We've had it forever.
I'm sure I'll be able to find it, and I'll put it on after this.
Perfect.
Radio. So, Dixie Longate, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. You make me all tingly. Just like being like, hey, what are you doing up there in the north? I'm like drinking, because the holidays is almost here, so it's my excuse. I mean, I do it all the time, but this one I'm like, okay, yeah, it's the holidays or whatever. So thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure because I feel I've been following you for a while. I mean, you've come to Australia, you've done the comedy festivals, and as we were discussing off air, you've done a show with the Mardi Gras as well in Sydney. And we'd love you to come down when you can. I mean,
I would love to come. Like I said, everybody there is so stinking neighborly. Y'all are so sweet. And when I come down, it's like, oh, your accent's funny. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But I have such a good time. And like, y'all have like the Mardi Gras Festival was so amazing with all the floats and all the people that were kind of almost dressed, not really. And then they're like, hey, have some glitter. And you're like, when it gets in your mouth and you can't spit it out fast enough. So it's like that. But then everybody's so neighborly, and like you can have sex down the dumpsters, everything for like less than $1. And I don't even know how much it's worth down there, the Australian dollar. So it's different than ours. And then, I did the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. And oh my God, that was incredible. Oh, that was my first introduction to Australia, was going down and doing that. And everybody could not have been more neighborly. And it was like summer camp for kids. We had the most fun, all the different comedians from all over. And it was so fun to meet people and just, people that were like on the top of their careers and people that were just doing their very first set of comedy were down there, and everybody commingled. It was the nicest thing. It was a really wonderful, it just like filled my heart. Not in that way that you have to go to the hospital and then get it pumped out because like, oh, her heart's large. Maybe, you need to do a transplant. Like, you ever done that? You ever got to pick somebody up from the hospital that just got a pig transplant heart for some reason because like their valve was full or whatever, and you're like, I don't think that was the animal you were supposed to put in there, But no, I'm not a doctor.
Is that what they do in Alabama, Dixie?
Yeah. Also, all the time, like the doctors were like, oh, your heart's blocked or whatever. And then you got to go get a new heart in. But sometimes it's not always like, you can only have so many people that die in a car accident. They can take their heart out and put it in somebody else. Sometimes you got to use the heart of an animal. And sometimes it's like, oh, a pig valve works good or whatever. But then if there's none around, you just go down the freeway and see if like somebody hit a raccoon. And you're like, well, it's small, but maybe we'll put 2 raccoon hearts together and put it in. It'll work. It doesn't normally work, but they try it. I mean, by the end of the week, they're running low on new organs. So you got to wait for the shipment to come in on Tuesday. So try not to need a heart transplant at the end of the week. I think that's just pretty much the moral of the story.
Okay. It's a good moral to share around. So thank you.
It is, especially around the holidays. It's like a Christmas gift for everybody.
Exactly, because there's going to be a lot of going on, like you're saying, overindulgence. It's the overindulgence season.
You never know when you overindulge too hard, and then your heart goes out, and then you're like, got to get a raccoon heart because it's Saturday afternoon, and they've run out of the good ones at the hospital. You know how that is.
Well, I've still got my original heart, so I'm going to follow your advice. Not on Saturdays, and Christmas Day falls on a Saturday here.
So that's a double whammy because nobody's even in the hospital then. They're just like, closed, done for the day, got to go and celebrate. Where's the tree? So that way, don't get sick on the Christmas and don't have a fatal heart thing because you're not going to get nothing. You're going to have to do it yourself. You ever done a heart transplant on yourself? This is hard because you got to look down and be unconscious. It's hard to like be doing something with your hands while you're unconscious. I mean, please, we all know that.
Yes. Like, especially when you've indulged too much.
I mean, when your belly's full of something that you ate, and you're looking down, and you're unconscious, and you're
disgusted, spewing out
everywhere, and then you can get that into the open incision in the heart that you try to make, and that a custard heart never is good. It doesn't work. It doesn't pump blood the right way. It gets all thick and coagulated. Yeah.
Well, that's what we all have to remember this Christmas.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the Christmas.
Think of your heart when you think of that next pudding.
Totally right. You're totally right. God bless you. You're just an angel, baby Jesus above.
Oh, well, thank you, Dixie. I like to be on the right page. So, you've been performing since 2007. How did you think of working with Tupperware, and how did Dixie sort of come together?
Well, it's actually before that. I started selling Tupperware it was in 2001 is when I started. And I started doing Tupperware parties. And a friend of mine said, oh, you should do this. This would be fun to do. And I was like, stop it. You're drunk. And then I was like, Mom, were you on the floor? You know, when you're like at a reunion or whatever, and like half the family's on the floor and they're not moving. And you're like, oh, no. You know, that's either the Jello shots are bad or they're reenacting Jonestown. Neither one of them are a good idea, by the way. And so anyway, so a friend of mine said, you should do this. I think it'd be good. And there was a woman who came to do a Tupperware party, and I saw her party. And I went because I thought it'd be hilarious. I thought it'd be just very nostalgic and everything. Because Tupperware obviously has been in the U.S. for years and years and years. Started in the 50s, and I know it's there. I know you have it in Australia, but it got launched in Australia after. Like, so Tupperware is sold in over 100 countries right now. It's crazy. They have Tupperware in places I didn't even know they had food. I know. And then, but so it was always an iconic thing. It became very big in like the 60s and 70s in the U.S. And I remember it from like my mama going to Tupperware parties and everything. But then it was when a friend of mine said, oh, I'm going to have a Tupperware party. And I'm like, oh my God, that's hilarious. I want to be there because I just think it would be fun and nostalgic and I would get a big kick out of it. Well, the lady who was doing the party was really good. She was very, very she sold the product well, but she was also very convincing. She's like, want to be on my team? Want to be on my team? Want to be on my team? She asked everybody. And a friend of mine said, you should do this. You'd be really good at this. And I said, stop it. You know, and then I signed up and I started doing parties, and it was easy. You know, I was just like doing parties, and I was terrible when I started because I like pick up a bowl and call it a spoon. I mean, I was terrible, but people were having a good time, and I was like, great, I made a little money. I'll do a couple more of these, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I ended up, I swear to God, it's a true story. I became the top selling Tupperware lady in the entire United States and Canada. Isn't that crazy? I know. And then a friend of mine who's a director in New York said, you know what? I love this idea. I love this story. Let's make this into a show and let's move it to New York and see if we can get a little bit of traction on it. So in 2004, I took it to New York with what is called the New York International Fringe Festival. Went there, did really well in the Fringe, got a lot of attention. That led to an off-Broadway run, and that's what started in 2007. I went off-Broadway with my show, and that sort of like started the whole thing. The show did well. It got a lot of attention, got a lot of critical praise and some award nominations, everything. And then the people that I was working with said, let's take this on tour. So we finished the run in New York, and then we went on tour in 2008. And at the time they were like, oh, the tour booker thought, oh, we'll probably get like maybe a year, maybe 2 years at most out of this show. And then you know what? The tour booker kind of finished doing what they were doing. And then I said, look, I'm not ready to let this go. This can't be that hard to book a tour. And I started booking it myself. And then it just exploded and it just kept going. And that's when I started going into other countries with it. That's when it got bigger in the United States and kept going. And if it wasn't for COVID shutting down all, everything, but all the theaters, I had a full schedule and it was going to keep going. But then COVID shut it down, everything stopped. And now it's like, okay, now we're working back up to what's going to be happening when things open up again. I'm like, I've done this show, I've done it well, and I've had a good time doing it. But now I want to go and do some other things. I have another show that I've written. It's a brand new show called Shit Kicker that's going to be opening in April. And really excited about that. It's fun. All my shows have a message of empowerment and, this thing about go out there and take on the world and you can do it and value yourself a little bit more than you do. And so that happened in Tupperware Party. That happened in my second show. I have another show called Never Wear a Tube Top While Riding a Mechanical Bull and 16 Other Things I Learned While I Was Drinking Last Thursday. And that's a fun show. That opened in 2014. So I was doing Tupperware and that show in tandem in different cities, like back to back. And then COVID stopped it. And then I did a virtual show, went into the theater, wrote a new show, shot a new show, put it out there for people to be able to see called Dixie's Happy Hour. So that was my official third show. And then the new show is called Shit Kicker. So when things open up, I'm going to go out guns blazing with this brand new show and see what we can do. Because I want to unleash the inner shit kicker in everybody. And shit kicker is a word you probably don't have down there, do you? Do you know?
Yeah.
Okay, you know what it is. All right. So yeah. So I'm gonna let everybody release their inner shit kicker and show themselves their, make their superhero, put on their superhero cape and make their powers come out a little bit. So.
Yeah. Good on you, Dixie Longate. We need you. Like we've been sitting around in our tracksuit pants, and so has everyone in the world for 2 years. We've got shit to kick.
Yes. Amen. And that's what it's about. It's about getting out there. And I will tell you, I was very lucky when I went down to the festivals down there and I met a lot of your great comedians that you have, down that your local homegrown comedians that are so phenomenal, so funny, so lovely, so incredible. And I got to chat with them and pal around with them a bit. And a lot of them have specials on Netflix, and it's been doing my heart so much good to watch their specials. I'm like, oh, my friends are on the TV. So I keep watching the specials of all my Aussie friends that are down there releasing stuff. And it's really fun. I'm like, I feel like I'm just there right now. So it's been good. So I love that everybody's doing their best to make everybody smile.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I feel you're doing. So how's it like been growing up in Alabama, Dixie? So how did that shape your background and how you've grown?
I had a pretty decent upbringing, pretty decent life, and I had just people around me that were lovely. And listen, Alabama is, the South is its own situation. There are a lot of places that are very restricted and very conservative and very crazy, and you just sort of navigate your way around it. And when I would run into people that were, pushing back on me, I'd be like, I'm sorry, you're not paying my bills. You don't get to make the decisions about my life. You go over there and you do what you need to do, but you do not get to step on my lawn and tread on my life. And so I've always been a little bit of a, I'm not a rabble rouser, but I've always been a little like I stand up for myself, and I always have. I think that's put me in really good stead because now I'm in a position that I just always do stand up for myself, and because I feel like, and this is my upbringing, because I always lead from a place of love and kindness. I'm not one of them queens that's just going to sit there and point at people and try to rip them down and try to make myself feel better and try to make everybody laugh at somebody else, laugh at their expense. I'm not like that. I always try to see the best in people. I try to see the things that they're not seeing themselves and try to lift them up. So I think that puts me in a different position within a lot of the drag artists in the community that do that kind of like, man, let me tear you down.
Here's another joke.
Well, yeah, there's a place for that, and there is comedy in that, and there's a lot of people who do it really well. But my thing has always been like, let's do what I can. I want people to walk out of here going, God, that I feel inspired by that. I feel empowered by that. I feel like I'm ready to go on and take on the world. And I think that like that's what I'm good at. So I'd rather spend my time focusing on that and leave people smiling for a different reason walking out of the show. So because I've always led from love and done that sort of all grown up all my life, it just sort of was a natural transition when I started doing the character.
Oh, that's a lovely way to answer that question. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
So this may be an intense one, but what does Dixie, what do you offer to society as a cultural statement?
Well, I think going back to, reflecting the last answer I gave, the thing that I really give is I give a sense of reflection to the audience about how can you be better? What can you do to make your life more grateful and more loving and more challenging people in that way, because I want them. My goal is I'm always going to try to lead by a smile, but my bigger goal is I want other people to go out there and do the same. I want people to think of kindness first and think of how can I help first and think of, what can I do to make this situation better? And so the way that I write my shows and the way that I just sort of lead my life is in that way. How can I help? How can I make things better? How can I serve in a way that that inspires people? And hopefully that will inspire other people. So my goal, my mission, if I could leave my trademarks on anything, it would be to inspire people to find out what's really great about them. I've always believed, I think everybody is better than they give themselves credit for, but there's so many voices out there that say, don't be good, like settle down, calm down, stop talking. That's too big of a dream for you. Don't go for that. You're stupid if you do that. I think I want to be the absolute opposite. I want to be like, how can I help? What can you do better? How can you challenge yourself? Because every time you do something great in your life, you not only inspire yourself, but you inspire the people that are around you. And so my goal is always that. It's to see how I can inspire people to then go out and inspire others, because the only way we're going to have a world that's better and a world that's kinder is if we start with ourselves and make ourselves kind and to ourselves. And then we can go out and go, look, I've done my work on myself. I have, taken care of my side of the street. Now I'm in a position to be able to go out and go, hey, I want to do the same for you. How can I help you? How can I offer some service to you? And that is my goal. If I can leave one thing, I want people to really look at themselves and realize that they're better than they give themselves credit for, and start spending time looking at the things that they always have felt that they've suffered from, or that that other people have told them they're not good enough with, and then address that and find out what's great about them. And then they can go out and conquer the world.
Wow. That's a nice commitment. That's what we like to hear on HERstory.
I appreciate that. I mean, listen, you do a great, like we were talking about before the interview, you do a great service to give a voice to people. And I think the people, in my experience, the people that I've run into that seem to be like the underserved people, the people whose voices get kind of squashed, those are the people we really need to listen to, because those are the people that have struggled so hard and have then done something great. And now they have so much to offer, rather than the people who are just like, how can I cut things down? I don't think that serves anybody. It might serve them personally because it makes them feel good about themselves. But wouldn't you want to lead from a better place in your life, where you're leading from a place of love and kindness and happiness, and where people can thrive? I love that old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats, because it's true. If you can all rise together and you can all challenge yourself in a good way, I think the world benefits.
Fantastic. That's a great saying. I'm going to use that.
I love it. So isn't that great? That's always yeah. And I live in Alabama, where we get hurricanes all the time. So I know for sure a rising tide lifts all boats. Sometimes after a hurricane, I've had a boat in my backyard that wasn't mine. And I was like, oh my God, I got a boat. And that's always fun. Do
you get to keep that boat? Or?
No, I go in and I go around for a little bit, and then the police come in. They're like, you got to get the boat back. And I'm like, in a minute, because I'm having so much fun in the boat. But I dust up on the fingerprints and the evidence before I give it back, obviously. But yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
So, Dixie, does Chris's journey reflect yours in a way that where he grew up? Yeah, you tell me.
Similarly, yeah. So Chris is the one who created this whole shenanigans, and yeah, I mean, he had a similar journey where just he was a shit kicker. He was somebody that fought for his voice, and anytime people try to put him down, that was the thing. Like, he'd stand up for himself, and for better or for worse, and it got him to where he is. And then this was just a fun packaging to put on that, and then take it out, and got me more attention to get my message out of hope and love a little bit. And so, yeah, that's how it all came. And the other thing that I would say is none of this was kind of intentional. It all kind of snowballed. It wasn't anything that he ever set out to do, or that I ever set out to do. It was just something that kind of happened, and then, oh, okay, well, we'll try it. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, because I was doing this 21 years now. I was doing this from a time before social media, before Drag Race, before all of this stuff was happening. So, and I was doing shows in people's living rooms in the middle of conservative states, and they were loving it. And it was like, oh, well, if you really give people, if you kind of separate the politic from it all, which unfortunately we just don't do anymore. But if you just separate and you just get to the heart of, like, people want to be happy and be smiling and be entertained. And I'm like, well, that's something I could do. And so that, to me, was how I sort of got in the door with making people smile. And then when I started touring with the show, I mean, my show opened in Des Moines, Iowa, which is in the middle of the state, in the middle of, like, a very conservative bastion in the middle of the country. And so, like, I went in there, and we sight unseen, they didn't know the show. That was the first place the tour had booked me. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And I made people laugh and charmed them all. And they're like, oh, that's fun. And I've now been back to Des Moines 5 times with shows, because they love it. And we sell really well, and we'll go there for weeks at a time. And so I think if people just start to strip away the politic and just kind of go like, oh yeah, we're all people. We all want the same thing. We all want to feel love. We all want to be entertained. We all want to smile. I think that we would find more common ground that way. But so, yeah, so for your original question, I think, Chris just sort of figured out a way to stand up for himself, and that is through a very weird series of circumstances. This is how it's ended up.
And when he first discovered drag, I guess he knew he was a little different to all the other boys in high school, or what did drag mean initially, and has he told you how it's evolved for him?
Well, it's always sort of, Chris did a lot of theater growing up. So he was always in shows, always doing stuff, always, in costume for different events and stuff. So it was just sort of like an extension of that. It was never, like I said, it was never an intentional thing. Years ago, I think it was 2000, I was involved in a show. Well, Chris got involved in a show called Quest for the Crown, which was this giant AIDS fundraiser that they do in Los Angeles every year. And they took actors to do it. The whole thing it's patterned after a Miss Universe contest. It's very, very funny. But they didn't want drag queens to do it. They wanted actors, because they wanted a very... like a really clever, funny turn on everything. And drag was still not in its infancy, but it hadn't hit the stride that it is today. And so they just wanted people that were not going to come in there and lip sync a song. They wanted people who would just do these really outlandish, creative things. Like the year before he got involved, there was the person, one of the people did a under the big top theme. So it's all basically, it's evening interview, talent, and swimsuit. So it's done just like a pageant. And these people come out and they do their little platform, and it's so funny. And then every year, because the show had been going on for 10 years at that point, and every year people would try to top each other. And the last year before I did it, this year I saw it, there was somebody that came on stage and literally, I swear to God, brought a live elephant and did a whole thing with this live elephant. It was a whole circus theme thing. And she didn't win. I mean, that tells you how big this show was. And so when a friend of mine who was the choreographer for the show that year, he said, hey, we're doing this. Would you like to be involved? And I said, I saw last year. I thought it was the funniest, most outlandish thing I've ever seen. I'd love to be involved. And that was the first time that I'd ever, ever dressed up like this and did anything. And so I did a character called Miss Antarctica, and her name was Iva Chestcold. And she's, it was this whole thing where I had live animals on stage with me the whole time because my character was snowblind. And so I couldn't see, and I was walking around and bumping into things. It was very, very funny. And that whole thing sort of ended up, it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. And then when the Tupperware party happened, I was like, well, I already have that sort of in my bag of tricks. Now let's see where I can go with it. So that's how it all sort of started. It wasn't anything that was like a premeditated, oh, you know what I want to do in my life? It was never like that. It started from me just being asked to do a fundraiser. And then boom, then it exploded into the lovely vision you see before you today. I get it. I know it's hard to behold all of this. Well, that's why I have just a plain white background, because if I had a background behind me, it would be even more jarring to the eyes to see so much beauty. And so I just decided to dumb it down for the viewers. I'm a giver. That's what I do.
Oh, but it's a beautiful scene before us today.
You're so sweet. You make me all tingly in that place where Jesus lives. That's so sweet. I appreciate that.
Oh, whew. And it's on this end too. So as you talked about, you sort of touched on then, and I was just thinking about it as I put together some questions. Is it something that your friends, the drag industry sort of appreciate or think is a little crass, that drag is so, like, it's thought of as popular now through Drag Race and that sort of thing?
Well, I think it depends on who you ask. I think, there's the one side of it that's like, oh my God, that's great, because it's making it's giving people a platform for their expression. It's giving people that have never been introduced to that before a vocabulary that's new. It's getting understanding out. It's a whole battery of people now that you can find any day of the week on social media, for example, or in different bars performing in different shows. You see it so much in culture now that it's pretty extraordinary that how big it's gone, how part of the vernacular it is. There's the other there of course. Then there's that with that comes the old guard, the people that have been doing it for so long, the people that are really practiced and skilled at it, that kind of get shuffled under the carpet because every 6 minutes there's another group of 12 or 14 drag queens on a drag race somewhere in the world that are coming out, because that's become such a machine now. And it's literally on all the time, 24/7 in some country. And so there's so many that you kind of, I think it's great to show that, but I also think it does a disservice to the people who are on that show, because at some point you just have so many people out there doing it that you're like, we need to cast somebody on it, because they're going to do another version of it. And, it's RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars season 95. You got to get people on it. So at some point you're like, okay, well, you're just kind of watering down the art of drag, because I do believe it's a true art. And I've seen people on that show that are brilliantly artistic, but I've also seen people, that are not that good. I've seen people perform in different locations that are just not that good. But now, because it's so popular, everybody kind of says, well, I can do this. And the people that are very gifted at it, the people that have really taken time to craft their entire character and their world and how they do their shows and everything, some of those people unfortunately get lost, because it's so saturated now. And there's some real brilliant legacy people out there that a lot of the new people have never even heard of. And you owe these people so much thanks for paving the way when it wasn't so safe for you to be able to do what you do today. And I think there's that gets forgotten. But I don't think this art form is unique to that. I think that's just a cultural thing in general. I think the people that open the doors for other people often get forgotten as things go on. There's I actually just heard today, there was a thing that came out today. The oldest living drag queen in the United States of America is 91 years old. She's got a club up in Portland, Oregon, called Darcelle's. That club has now become part of the National Historic Registry. So there's a plaque on the building, meaning they can never tear that building down. And she literally still does shows at 91. She gets out there with her walker. I swear to God, she's got a bedazzled walker and she gets out there and she will do shows. Sometimes she doesn't remember the lyrics. Sometimes she just stands there and kind of goes, huh, what, who? But you've got to recognize the brilliance of when she started doing this. None of this was accepted. And so there is that deference that you have to pay and the knowledge that you have to have of the people that came before you to make it possible for any, Tom, Dick, or Harry to pick up a makeup sponge and go on Instagram and go, I have 1 million followers because I put makeup on. Okay, well, but take a minute to look at the people that have really paved the way when it wasn't okay to do this, for you to be this way. Because I think there's real value in understanding your history in anything, not just in this, like I said, but in anything. But, there's no difference in this. It's we're all part of a great family. And it's nice to know your family members. Do you know what I mean? Because in the same way, I'll take time to look on social media and find out who's coming up the pike and who people are. And when I'm on the road, anytime I'm on the road, I go out and I will see the local drag shows. I will tip them money. I will support them because I think it's great what they're doing, drag queens and kings alike, and go, hey, how can I support your art? Because I think what you're doing is great. And we all need that artistic expression. So,
yeah, I'm just concerned that the history needs to be, as you mentioned too, that the history does need to be acknowledged, and hopefully the popularity won't tread on that as it moves on and turns into
I think there's no way it won't tread on it in some ways, and that's just because we have historical precedents to show that anytime something gets that big, the things that created it fall by the wayside. It's just the way that happens. But again, I think you're right. I think everybody should do the service of looking at the people that came before them, because there are brilliant people that it pays to know. I mean, it pays to look people up that have been doing drag for 30, 40, 50 years and go, God, look at them as pioneers. Look at what they started. Look at what they've given us. Look at the audiences they reached when it wasn't okay. I mean, you look at somebody like Dame Edna, to place somebody in your territory. I mean, I've known about Dame Edna for years. I've seen Dame Edna multiple times live all over the world, because I'm like, that's, you can't not ignore something that's that big and has become that popular and was such it was such a watershed thing to have Dame Edna come and become so popular and so big when drag wasn't accepted. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. She is a queen that we all should adore.
An icon, absolutely.
Yeah. Why? Well, we've sort of touched on it, but actually, no, I won't ask that one. And you've sort of touched on the other question too. I was going to ask, how do you keep your material fresh? But you sort of have different shows. Would that be how you keep your material fresh?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always writing material. I'm always creating new stuff. And also the benefit of doing, being me for 21 years now is I've lived in this part of my brain for so long that now I have I have a full backstory. I know everybody in my little life that I talk about in my shows. I have all of that information. It's such a built world in my head. So that there's always stories to tell about those people that I've sort of created in my world. And it just keeps me fresh. And I do a lot of interviews, which gives me a lot of opportunity to riff and improv and come up with new things. And then, of course, doing all this social media during the pandemic, I don't just get on and be like, well, I guess I'm just going to talk about stuff today. I mean, I get on, I script the things that I do. I know the stories I'm going to tell ahead of time. I put it all down and rehearse a little bit so that when I go on, when I go live, I have something to talk about. That it's not just like, I'm just sitting here during the pandemic, scratching my butt because there's nothing to do. I'm like, oh, let me tell you a story. And I'll go into a story. And those stories have been, it's just me creating more material. So I always believe in challenging myself a little bit to go, what can I create? And how can I tell you a story that's going to engage you and keep you coming back for more? So that's part of the fun of it for me. I'm sitting here, if you saw my desk, I'm literally surrounded right now with notebooks and stuff for my, all these notes, all these things for my new show, all these different notebooks I have around here. Of stuff that I'm working on, because I'm constantly developing stuff because I think it's fun. It's just, it's telling stories. So I want the stories to be good and funny. And so I never stop creating.
Fantastic. So onto the Tupperware. What are some new pieces that we've had this year that you need to showcase?
Well, I will tell you, listen, Tupperware is amazing. It's been around forever. I love the company. I've been working with them for, like I said, for almost 21 years now. And they're so embracing and so lovely about somebody as pretty as me getting to be part of their ranks. And but every year they're putting out new stuff, and I'm doing parties. And I've done a lot, like during the pandemic, I did a lot of parties just like this, like Zoom parties, online parties. And there's always something new, there's some of the tried and true things that I will never put down because, like, I love my Tupperware wine opener. I have one in the glove box of the truck. I got one next to the bed. And, every child I know gets one in their stocking because it's important to be able to open a bottle of wine when you're, like, driving and you're thirsty. Because if your kid is like 8 years old and they can't drive a tractor drunk, they're of no use to the rest of the world. So you got to learn them early. And a lot of people don't realize they're going back now into the workforce because a lot of people have been out of, working from home and everything, and they're like, oh, I haven't worn pants and I've drank every day for the last 20 months. How am I going to get back to doing that while I'm working in front of people? Well, the pants thing I can't really help you with. You're going to have to do that on your own. But if you do, like, for example, if you get a bottle of wine, this is very important. If you get a bottle of wine and you tie the Tupperware wine opener to it and put a bow on it with like a little tag saying you're doing a great job, love, Oscar from HR, what happens is you put that in your bag, and then at the end of the day when everyone's gone home, you just put that on your desk, okay? It doesn't even matter if there's an HR department. It doesn't matter. The point is when you come in the morning, you go, oh, you act all surprised. Somebody from HR gave me a bottle of wine. Well, it'd be a shame to just let that sit there and not drink it. So you like open it, put a straw in it and drink it, and then the next day you put another bottle on, and then the next day another bottle on, and then the next day another bottle on. So there's always somebody giving you a bottle. And the side benefit from that, not only is you going to be drinking during the day at work, which you've been doing for the last 20 months, but also it gives you the opportunity to just show that to your boss, and your boss is going to go, my God, you're doing such great work. You're getting acknowledged from every department. It's time for a raise. See, that's the thing. I really want to give people the opportunity to do better in the world. That's what I do. I'm a giver. I can't help it.
Well, I'm glad you're, training the generations too. We want that.
It's a full-time job, but somebody's got to do it. It's true. It's true. But that's how I am. But I think there's a ton of great Tupperware. And the thing that's fun is when I was down there years ago, I was doing my show and I would pull up pieces of Tupperware. And before I ever even said anything about it, I would get cheers from people. I would get giggles from people because the cultural significance of Tupperware right now, there is sort of where we were in the 70s. So there is this, like, people know it, they love it, they go to Tupperware parties, they've seen it, they have an understanding and awareness of it. Here in the States, the awareness is sort of waned. I mean, it's still around, but it's not as popular anymore, but it's still very popular down there. So it was very funny to pick up different tumblers that I was using into this meat marinade. I remember specifically I picked up the meat marinator and it got a cheer. I didn't even say anything yet, and it got a cheer when I picked up the meat marinator, and it made me start laughing. I was like, I'm not even saying nothing. What are you cheering about? They're like, we love that. We have that. And so it was so funny to have people love and acknowledge the product so well, right from the start, because Tupperware is a great product. It's been amazing selling it. I mean, look, it bought me my second trailer. So that says something. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, what's your favorite piece? Oh, the wine opener?
I mean, the wine opener, without question, is one of the best things in the world. We also have this, and I'm sorry I didn't plan it for this, or I would have brought it and showed it. I have a large thing. They call it a cake taker. Now, you put 34 Jello shots on it, and then you go to church, for example, and it's so nice because, you know, when at church, they're like, here's a tumbler with a little Dixie cup with Jesus's blood in it or whatever, and you're like, delicious. Yeah, okay. But it's just very selfish to give it out in a single little cup at a thimbleful at a time. I just go up there with a whole tray of Jello shots, and then everybody smiles. It brings you so close to Jesus in just, you know, a heartbeat. And so I do that. I think that's very nice. And sharing. I mean, it's all about sharing. So I do that. That's one of my favorite pieces. I go around. And then, like, if you ever have a problem with where your little ones are getting in trouble at school, you can walk into school with that under your arm, and it's just, you look so sexy as you're going into the principal's office to be able to plead to get your kid out of detention. You know, it's very important as a mother to be able to do that, because kids, you know, they're sticky and nobody wants them. But if you have them by accident or whatever, then it's important to make sure that they don't spend half their life in detention. And you know what? A couple of Jello shots in a well-placed Jello shot caddy from Tupperware, that just clears all that up. So,
well, thank you. Thank you for telling us how to use those pieces as well.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize, like, Tupperware is for you to use any way you need to. That's what I like about it. It's it lets your creativity flow. I mean, a lot of people will look at a tumbler and be like, oh, I'm just going to put water in there. You know, and then when you realize that gin goes in just the same way water does, it just comes out differently. It opens your imagination up. You know, it's a good thing to do, because I think a lot of people stop using their imagination after they start. You know, once you stop being like 5 or 6 or 7 years old, you stop watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or whatever, and then you're like, oh, I can't ever be creative again. But when you hit that age, 13, let's say, and you're like, hey, vodka and gin are the same color as water. Let's put that in the tumbler. That's going to be great. You know, it allows you to use your creativity. And I think we cannot afford to let that creativity go dormant. We can't.
Well, thank you again for reminding us. A life tip.
What I do.
I feel that's, and you talked about it, that's what Dixie Longate is bringing to the world.
I like to think so. I really do. I like to think that I'm here to give everybody as much information as I can so they can make their own choices about what to do wrong in the world. That's what I'm proposing. Yeah.
So you've got some tour dates coming up, Dixie. Could we run through where we can find you, firstly online, the socials, and then where you'll be on the road, not just Absolutely. In Australia, but
well, I'm working on getting back to Australia. I'm actually going to be, so you can find me at all my social handles. The most ones that I spend time on are Instagram and Facebook. And that just look for me, Dixie Longate, DixieLongate, just rolls off the tongue, you know, just like it sounds. But yeah, you can find me on both of those platforms. And then I'm going to be doing, so I'm putting everything together for the year right now. I have most of the stuff I'm doing is coming up in America. I'll be opening my new show April 2nd. My new show, Shit Kicker, is going to open April 2nd in Fort Worth, Texas. And I'm going to be doing mostly dates right now in the U.S., but we are working right now on getting back to the Edinburgh Fringe this summer. So in August, I'm going to be in the Edinburgh Fringe. And a lot of times there is a bit of a shared thing between Australia and the Edinburgh Fringe. So if you do one, you end up doing the other one. It's kind of like a lot of people will cross over. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to get down at some point next year to Australia and just, you know, charm the pants off of each and every one of y'all, because y'all are so nice. I just love y'all. So that's the plan. That's what I'm working on. That's the bargain. So if I can do it, I'm going to do it. You know,
fantastic.
Hey, that's how I roll, as they say on the road. I don't know where they say that, but they say it somewhere. I've heard it. But yeah, so if you just go, and if anybody's interested and you go on my social media, I always tell people where I'm going to be if I have shows coming up, and if I'm going to be somewhere, everybody will always know, because that's my main ability to get information out to people is to the socials, you know. But yeah, but I'm on all the time doing little live videos talking about stuff. I'm going to be making my favorite, my pumpkin pie martini, because it is Thanksgiving this coming week up in the United States. So I'm going to be making the festive drink, which is like, it's like drinking pumpkin pie, but then you take your pants off. So it's nice for the, households that are getting back together again. And you're like, what has it been like this year? Well, you just drink this and you take your pants off, you don't care. And so that's going to be really good, And why have all those calories in an actual piece of pumpkin pie when you can drink it and it tastes just the same? And it just makes you a little happier. Who doesn't want to be happy, especially around the holidays when you're forced to see people you don't really care about, but the law says you gotta love them, they're your family, whatever.
Well, I was going to ask what's coming up for the holidays, and there you go.
Yes, I'm going to spend some time with my mama making martinis, and with my 3 kids. If you want any, you can have them, gift with purchase. I got 3 kids, 16-year-old, 10-year-old, and a 3-year-old, Winona, Dwayne, little absorbing junior. He's heaven's little angel, that 3-year-old. And so I'm going to be with them and taking them to see their Meemaw. And we're just going to have fun drinking and trying to forget, mostly. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to do that for both Thanksgiving and the Christmas time. And then New Year's, I'm going to be sobering up, I think, probably. Who cares?
Well, you've got to have a New Year's resolution.
And I do. A lot of them. There's a lot of people I don't want to talk to no more. There's a lot of people I want to accidentally have sex with when I wasn't planning on it. So I make lists. It's going to be like lots of list making, because that's it. When you run into somebody in the wild, and you're like, oh, am I supposed to have sex with them? Let me look at the list, because you don't want to do it twice. Yeah. Or if it's somebody that you already had sex with and it was really bad, if you put it on certain pages in my list, I can be like, oops, sorry. No, but sometimes, you forget. So it's best to write it down. That's what I find. It's best
to have lists.
Amen. How do we do life before paper and pen? I don't know.
Well, in Australia, we wrote on walls in caves. The Aboriginals did that.
But it's really hard when you're having sex with somebody you just ran into, like at the supermarket, to be like, oh, come back to my cave. Let me just check my wall painting and make sure I wanted to have sex with you again. That's an added hassle. Because then if you find them on the do not do list, then you're like, oh, got to get them out of the cave. And how do you do that? Surely clubbing them on the head and dragging them out. And that's just a hassle.
That's probably.
Who knows where you left the club last time? It's hard. It's hard.
Well, I'm just looking at the time, Dixie. We're probably pushing it. We'll get kicked off soon, I would imagine.
Kicked off.
Have you got anything else to add?
Well, all I will say is I know right now things are tough. I know right now a lot of people are at each other's throats, and I know down there, because there's a lot of lockdowns still happening, that everybody's sort of getting suffocated with stuff. I get it, and it's tough. I think make sure you find every day a little space of time to be creative, do something for you that you love, and something for you that you get to give back and that makes you smile as well. Because the only way we're all going to get through this together is by smiling and sharing some love with each other. So find that that little space in yourself first by giving something to yourself, and then be able to share it with other people. That's what my hope for everybody is.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful message. Thank you for sharing that.
Honey, I adore you. You are so sweet. I want to stick you on a popsicle stick and put you in my mouth. I swear to God, you're just too sweet for words.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, I hope I get to see you again, but the next time it's going to be in person.
I'm going to be front row if you make it to the Fringe Festival here.
You better. If I'm down there, we're going to be connected, and you're going to have to come and see the program. I'm going to make you do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to get some of that Tupperware.
Of course. I'll help you with your food storage needs. That's my goal.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you again for being on HERstory for Slice Radio. We all love you here. We have, I believe, my boss, Dan, talked to you when you were down here for the Melbourne Festival. Yes. I said that I'm talking to Dixie Longate. He was like, I think I've talked to her before. But
that was the only reaction. I think I've talked to her before.
No. That had some appreciation for you.
Okay. I hope it wasn't like, oh God, again.
No.
All right. Okay, good. Yeah. That's never a good thing. So.
All right.
Well, tell Dan I said hi, rub up on his leg like a dog looking for peanut butter, and say it's from me.